The Silent Conquest. The Vexari warships emerged from the darkness beyond Mars, their obsidian hulls absorbing rather than reflecting light. 73 vessels that seemed to swallow the stars behind them. Humanity's early warning systems barely had time to sound the alarm before the first energy pulses struck military installations across Earth. Within hours, the planet's orbital defenses were reduced to drifting debris. Commander Elena Chen watched from the underground command center beneath what remained of Stockholm as the global defense grid collapsed node by node. 6 years commanding special tactics and reconnaissance hadn't prepared her for this level of devastating efficiency. All conventional forces reporting critical failures, Commander, Lieutenant Diaz reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. Beijing command is gone. Moscow, Washington, New Delhi, all dark. Elena's eyes narrowed as she studied the tactical display. The Vexari weren't just winning. They were executing a perfect invasion, targeting military infrastructure with surgical precision, while leaving civilian centers largely untouched. "They've studied us," she murmured, more to herself than to the room of exhausted officers. "Analyzed our defensive protocols, our command structures, our weapon capabilities, everything." Admiral Hastings, the highest-ranking survivor of the Atlantic Fleet's destruction, approached the command table. His normally immaculate uniform was stained with soot, one sleeve torn where medics had treated a plasma burn. "We've lost 87% of our conventional forces," Hastings reported. "The Vexari are broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. The UN Security Council is convening what remains of world leadership to discuss terms." Elena slammed her fist on the table. "Discuss terms? We're just going to hand over Earth because they took out our toys." "What would you suggest, Commander?" Hastings asked, his voice edged with defeat. "Our carriers are at the bottom of the ocean. Our missile silos are smoking craters. Our air forces can't even get off the ground before being shot down." Elena's gaze swept the room, taking in the faces of her fellow officers, some defeated, some angry, all exhausted. "The Vexari have studied our conventional warfare doctrine," she said slowly. "They've prepared for everything in our military playbook. But there's one thing they couldn't have prepared for." "And what's that?" Hastings asked. Elena's lips curved into a grim smile. "Everything that isn't in the playbook." 3 days later, representatives from Earth's surviving governments signed the official surrender aboard the Vexari command vessel. The terms were unexpectedly merciful. Humanity would retain autonomy over daily governance, but all military activities would cease. Vexari overseers would establish command centers in major cities to ensure compliance. What the Vexari didn't know was that while the world's leaders signed their capitulation, Elena Chen was activating what she called the Ember Protocol. In an abandoned salt mine beneath the Polish countryside, Elena addressed a group of 50 men and women. Special forces operators from a dozen countries, intelligence agents, hackers, and engineers who had escaped the initial assault. "The Vexari have won the conventional war," she told them. "But conventional warfare isn't humanity's only trick." She brought up holographic displays showing Vexari patrol patterns across Europe. They move with perfect precision. Their units maintain exact spacing. Their patrol routes never vary by more than a few meters. And that, she said, her finger tapping a point on the display, is their first weakness. Dr. Samira Khalid, formerly of DARPA, stepped forward. "We've analyzed their communication patterns. The Vexari operate on a strict hierarchical structure. Every decision passes through their chain of command. There's no room for individual initiative. Imagine if human soldiers needed permission from their general for every magazine change," Elena added. "That's how the Vexari function." Jonas Rice, a former Australian SAS operative, frowned. "That doesn't make any sense. How could they have conquered 27 worlds with that kind of rigid structure?" "Because it works," Dr. Khalid replied. "Against conventional military forces, their approach is devastatingly effective. They can coordinate thousands of units with perfect synchronization. No wasted movements, No miscommunications, no confused orders. Elena nodded. But they've never faced humans before. And humans, she smiled thinly, are absolutely terrible at following rules when our survival is at stake. Over the next week, the Ember Protocol spread through secure channels to resistance cells forming across the globe. Rather than direct confrontation, Elena's strategy emphasized unpredictability and asymmetric warfare, the very antithesis of Vexari military doctrine. In Singapore, a Vexari patrol disappeared in the underground passages beneath the city. In Cairo, communication relays suddenly failed, forcing Vexari units to operate blind for crucial hours. Outside Tokyo, supply convoys found roads blocked by malfunctioning civilian vehicles. None of these incidents would register as significant military actions to the Vexari. But they weren't meant to. They were tests, probing the aliens' responses, identifying patterns, and confirming Dr. Khalid's theories about their command structure. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Fatima al-Zarani had been a graduate student studying xenobiology when the invasion began. Hidden away in the Ember Protocol's makeshift lab, she made a discovery that changed everything. They're synesthetes, she explained to Elena and the command team, pointing to brain scans taken from a dead Vexari recovered from a downed shuttle. Their sensory perception is completely integrated. They don't process sound, sight, and other stimuli separately like we do. How does that help us? Elena asked. Fatima's eyes gleamed with excitement. It means we can overload them. Their neural pathways can't filter sensory information. If we hit them with the right combination of stimuli, we can effectively short-circuit their decision-making abilities. Elena leaned forward. Can you weaponize this? 3 days later, the first disruptor was tested against a Vexari patrol in the ruins of Marseille. The device, hardly larger than a smartphone, emitted precisely calibrated patterns of light, sound, and electromagnetic pulses. The effect was immediate. The 4-member Vexari patrol froze in place, their movements becoming erratic before they collapsed entirely. It's not killing them, Fatima explained as they reviewed the footage. It's overwhelming their sensory integration, like inducing an extreme migraine combined with vertigo. They physically can't function while exposed to it. Elena studied the images thoughtfully. Mass-produce them. Every resistance cell gets as many as we can make. There's something else, Dr. Khalid added. We've been monitoring their communications. The Vexari don't just discourage individual initiative. They seem incapable of it. When we've disrupted their command structure, even temporarily, their units simply wait for new orders. They can't adapt, Elena realized. They're so dependent on their hierarchy that without it, they're paralyzed. Over the following weeks, the Ember Protocol transformed from tests into organized resistance. Disruptors were deployed strategically against Vexari command units. Once their officers were incapacitated, the remaining forces could be avoided, or if necessary, neutralized with minimal risk. The Vexari responded by increasing patrol strength and implementing overlapping command structures, but this only revealed another weakness. They could only conceive of solutions within their existing doctrine. The idea of fundamentally changing their approach never occurred to them. As resistance operations expanded, Elena established a secure command center in an abandoned nuclear bunker beneath the Alps. Intelligence flowed in from around the world, painting a picture of growing Vexari confusion. They're pulling forces back to their primary bases, reported Diaz, now Elena's chief intelligence officer, consolidating their positions, increasing defense around their landing zones. They're retreating to what they can control, Elena observed. Classic response to an insurgency. When you can't control everything, you protect what matters most. There's something else, Diaz added. The Vexari are communicating more frequently with their fleet in orbit. Our analysts think they're requesting reinforcements. Elena stood before the tactical display, watching as red Vexari territory shrank day by day, becoming concentrated islands in a sea of contested ground. They came expecting a conventional surrender, she said quietly. Instead, they're getting a lesson in human stubbornness. She turned to her officers. It's time for the next phase. In Vexari High Command aboard their capital ship, Supreme Commander Nexus reviewed the deteriorating situation with growing concern. The holographic display showed another failed operation. A supply convoy ambushed using methods that defied Vexari tactical algorithms. Explain this failure. Nexus demanded of first strategist Terrace. Terrace's inner eyelids flickered nervously. The humans are not adhering to established military protocols. Supreme Commander. They attack without formation, without unified weapons, without observable command structure. Impossible. Nexus hissed. No military can function without coordination. And yet, Terrace gestured to the display. They function. Our casualties increase daily while our control diminishes. Nexus's clawed hand slashed through the hologram in frustration. The humans signed their surrender. Their military capability was neutralized. Their leaders capitulated. How are they still fighting? I believe, second strategist Varric interjected carefully, we may have misunderstood human nature. They appear to possess a capacity for decentralized action that has no parallel in our experience. Nexus turned to the communications officer. Send word to the Dominion. Request additional peacekeeping forces. The humans require further persuasion to accept their place. As the message was transmitted, none of the Vexari noticed the subtle fluctuation in their communication array, a fluctuation that meant every word was being intercepted by the very humans they were discussing. In the Alpine bunker, Alina listened to the translated Vexari communication and smiled. They're calling for reinforcements, she told her officers. They don't understand what they're facing, and they're getting desperate. Major Rice crossed his arms. So what's our next move, Commander? Alina's eyes gleamed with fierce determination. Now we show them exactly what happens when humanity decides to get serious. The Awakening Storm. 6 months after the Vexari invasion, Earth had transformed. What began as isolated resistance cells had evolved into a coordinated global movement. The aliens still controlled their landing zones and command centers. But everywhere else, humans had reclaimed their world through methods the Vexari couldn't comprehend. In the Alpine Command Center, Elena studied the latest intelligence reports with quiet satisfaction. The Vexari reinforcements had arrived 3 weeks ago and walked straight into prepared ambushes. Their perfect formations made them perfect targets. They're still using the same patrol routes, Diaz observed, highlighting movement patterns across the tactical display. Even after we've hit the same points repeatedly, they can't conceive of changing their doctrine, Dr. Khalid replied. Their entire civilization is built on precise order and hierarchy. The idea of adapting to chaos is literally alien to them. Elena nodded, and that's why we're winning. They expected us to fight like them, with order, structure, and predictability. She gestured to the display showing resistance activities across 6 continents. Instead, they got this. The Ember Protocol had evolved beyond Elena's initial vision. What started as basic guerrilla tactics had blossomed into thousands of independent operations, each adapted to local conditions and resources. Fishing villages in Indonesia disrupted Vexari naval patrols with nets that fouled propulsion systems. Nomadic herders in Mongolia used their knowledge of the steppes to lead alien forces into natural traps. Even children played their part, with playground games deliberately staged near Vexari patrols, creating sensory patterns that disrupted alien coordination. The Vexari have pulled back to 37 fortified positions worldwide, Major Rice reported. They've abandoned all attempts to maintain widespread control. And their communication to the Dominion? Elena asked. Diaz grinned. Increasingly desperate, they're using terms that translate roughly as inexplicable and defying tactical analysis to describe our resistance. Good, Elena said, but it's not enough. She activated a secure holographic display, revealing detailed schematics of the Vexari command vessel in Earth orbit. We've contained them on the ground. Now we need to cut off their head. The room fell silent as officers studied the immense vessel hovering above Earth. "You want to attack their command ship?" Admiral Hastings asked incredulously. "With what? We don't have spacecraft capable of military operations." "Not in the conventional sense, no," Elena agreed. "But conventional warfare isn't what's winning this fight." Dr. Khaled stepped forward. "We've been analyzing their ship design based on captured data. The Vexari command vessel follows the same principles as their ground tactics, highly efficient but utterly inflexible. Its systems are centralized and hierarchical. All roads lead to Rome," Elena added, "or in this case, all commands flow through their central processing hub." She highlighted a section of the schematic. "Here." "Even if that's true," Hastings objected, "we have no way to reach it." Elena's smile was dangerous. "That's where you're wrong, Admiral. The Vexari have kindly provided us with transportation." Operation Thunderclap began 2 weeks later. Across the globe, resistance cells launched synchronized attacks on Vexari positions, not to destroy them, but to create a specific pattern of responses that would force the aliens to deploy their orbital shuttles. In the ruins of Cape Town, Elena watched from concealment as a Vexari shuttle descended to reinforce the local garrison, exactly as predicted. Beside her, Major Rice checked his equipment one final time. "Strike teams in position worldwide," he confirmed. "Simultaneous breach in 30 minutes." Elena nodded. "The Vexari pride themselves on perfect coordination. Let's show them how humans coordinate when we really want to." As the shuttle landed, a precisely calibrated disruptor activated nearby, incapacitating its crew without damaging the vessel. Elena's strike team, 12 operators from 5 different nations, moved in with practiced efficiency. While half the team secured the perimeter, Elena led the others aboard. "Control systems matched the simulations," reported Lieutenant Park, their technical specialist. "I can operate this." "Make it happen," Elena ordered. Around the world, 19 other Vexari shuttles were being captured in identical operations. 20 strike teams preparing to execute the most audacious counterattack in human history. As Park initiated the shuttle's launch sequence, Elena opened a secure channel to all teams. "Thunderclap is go. Ascent in 3 minutes. Maintain communication blackout until rendezvous at Point Artemis." The shuttle rose into the night sky, its Vexari systems convinced it was responding to a legitimate recall order thanks to Dr. Khaled's spoofing algorithms. 19 other shuttles joined them, converging on the far side of the moon, out of direct observation from the Vexari command vessel. "Final equipment check," Elena ordered as Earth shrank behind them. Each member of her team carried modified disruptors and compact electromagnetic pulse generators designed specifically for Vexari systems. They weren't soldiers going to battle. They were saboteurs targeting the system's weaknesses. At the lunar rendezvous point, the 20 shuttles reconfigured their identification transponders according to Dr. Khaled's specifications. To Vexari sensors, they would appear as a scheduled maintenance detail returning to the command vessel. "Approach vector locked in," Park announced. "ETA to docking, 17 minutes." Elena addressed the strike teams over their secure channel. "Remember, we're not trying to destroy their vessel or kill their leadership. Our target is their central processing hub. Disable it, and their entire command structure collapses." The massive Vexari command vessel grew larger in their viewports, a city-sized structure of geometric precision. No aesthetic considerations had influenced its design, only ruthless efficiency. "Receiving automated docking instructions," Park reported. "They're not questioning our approach." "Why would they?" Elena replied. "In their experience, no one would dare impersonate a Vexari vessel. The punishment would be too severe to contemplate." "Good thing humans are terrible at risk assessment," Rice quipped. The shuttle slid into a cavernous docking bay alongside dozens of identical vessels. As the airlock cycled, Elena checked the atmospheric readings. Breathable, but higher oxygen content than Earth normal. "Maintain discipline. No unnecessary exertion." The team moved through the Vexari vessel with practiced precision, their routes memorized from stolen schematics. Thanks to the disruptors, they neutralized the few Vexari they encountered without raising alarms. "This is almost too easy," whispered Corporal Lakshmi, their communications specialist. "It's not easy," Alina corrected. "It's asymmetric. They're prepared for frontal assaults, not infiltration. The concept doesn't exist in their tactical doctrine." 17 decks and 43 minutes later, Alina's team reached the central processing hub, a spherical chamber filled with crystalline computational structures that pulsed with internal light. The other strike teams reported similar progress across the vessel, each approaching their designated targets. "Set the devices according to the pattern," Alina ordered. "Precise placement is crucial." As her team positioned the electromagnetic disruptors around the chamber, Alina opened a direct channel to Dr. Khalid in the Alpine bunker. "We're in position. All teams reporting ready." "Understood," came Khalid's voice. "Remember, this isn't about destroying their systems. The pulse sequence will rewrite their command protocols, introducing a fundamental uncertainty factor they can't resolve." "In other words," Alina said, "we're teaching them to doubt." "Exactly. For a species that functions on absolute certainty, doubt is more devastating than any weapon." Alina gave the order, and 20 electromagnetic pulses activated simultaneously across the Vexari command vessel. The crystalline processors flickered, their perfect synchronization disrupted as new parameters infiltrated their network. In the Vexari command center, Supreme Commander Nexus watched in horror as system after system reported anomalies. Decision trees that had functioned perfectly for centuries suddenly presented contradictory options. Probability calculations included variables that couldn't be quantified. "What is happening?" Nexus demanded. First strategist Terrace stared at the displays in confusion. "The central processor is asking questions it has never asked before. It's introducing uncertainty into tactical projections." "Impossible. Reset the systems." "I cannot," Terrace admitted. "The processor refuses to accept the command. It's questioning the validity of the reset protocol." Throughout the massive vessel, Vexari officers found themselves facing an unprecedented situation: the need to make decisions without perfect information. Their neural architecture, evolved for precise execution of established protocols, had no framework for improvisation. As the command systems faltered, Alina's teams withdrew to their shuttles, departing as confusion spread through the Vexari ranks. By the time anyone thought to check the maintenance logs, the human strike teams were already on their way back to Earth. 3 days later, Alina stood before the assembled resistance leadership in the Alpine bunker, delivering the most unexpected news of the war. "The Vexari have requested negotiations," she announced. "Not for our surrender, for theirs." Murmurs of disbelief spread through the room. "What we did to their command systems has had a more profound effect than we anticipated," Dr. Khalid explained. "We intended to disrupt their tactical capabilities, but we've inadvertently triggered something like an existential crisis in their collective consciousness." Diaz frowned. "What does that mean exactly?" "It means," Alina said, "that for the first time in their history, the Vexari are questioning their own assumptions. Their perfect hierarchical system has been compromised not by superior force, but by the introduction of uncertainty, something they've never had to confront before." On the 7th day after Operation Thunderclap, Alina led the human delegation aboard the Vexari command vessel. Instead of the expected hostility, they found an atmosphere of subdued curiosity. Supreme Commander Nexus, towering above the human representatives, spoke with a new hesitancy. "Your species has achieved what 27 other worlds could not. You have introduced disorder into our perfect system." "Not disorder," Alina corrected. "Adaptation. Humans don't thrive despite uncertainty. We thrive because of it. Our entire evolution has been driven by adapting to changing circumstances. This concept is difficult for us," Nexus admitted. Our civilization has advanced through perfect execution of established patterns. The idea that progress can emerge from chaos is, the translator struggled for a moment, frightening. And yet, Alina pointed out, here you are, having this conversation, something that wasn't in your established protocols. For the first time in recorded history, a Vexari made a gesture that human anthropologists would later identify as the equivalent of a thoughtful smile. Perhaps, Nexus said slowly, our species has something to learn from yours. The treaty signed that day wasn't a document of surrender, but of mutual recognition. The Vexari would withdraw their military forces while maintaining diplomatic and scientific delegations on Earth. In exchange, humans would share their unique perspective on adaptation and uncertainty. As Elena watched the first Vexari transport vessels departing Earth's atmosphere, Admiral Hastings joined her on the observation deck. You know, he said quietly, when you first proposed the Ember Protocol, I thought you were delusional. Conventional wisdom said we couldn't win. Elena smiled. That's the thing about humans, Admiral. When our survival is at stake, we don't much care about conventional wisdom. In orbit above Earth, the Vexari command vessel began its departure maneuvers, its course calculated with a new algorithm, one that included variables for unexpected circumstances and a capacity to adjust accordingly. They had come to conquer a primitive world, confident in the superiority of their perfect order. They left humbled by the discovery that true strength lies not in rigid perfection, but in the ability to embrace uncertainty and adapt. The war was over. The learning had just begun.